Hello there.
Hello, how are you?
I think you're still muted there, Doctor.
Am I still muted now?
I can't hear you. You're muted.
So it doesn't show muted on my side.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, I'm here. For whatever reason, I can hear you. I'm not muted on this end.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now, sir.
Great. Okay, good deal. Good deal. And in fact, I'll just turn the volume up just a little bit. Is that better?
That's better. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good deal. Great. Okay, good deal. Good deal. Good deal.
Dr. Shamel. My name is Dr. Shamel. I'm with the United Theological Seminary.
Oh, good deal. Good to meet you. Shamir or Shamel?
Shamel.
Shamel. Gotcha.
Yes, sir. And I promise to do your introduction real brief.
Perfect.
I'll give you a Catholic introduction, not a Baptist introduction. Is it time to do that now?
So we've been running behind a couple minutes.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Everybody's running behind. I'm here in Indianapolis at the Alpha Phi Alpha convention.
Is that right? That's a great place to be.
Oh, you know something about Alpha Phi Alpha?
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's good to know that I'm talking to my fellow brother. So I'm exhibiting for United here at the fraternity for the first time. The seminaries at the fraternity convention.
Wow, how about that? How about that?
Won't God do it?
Won't do it?
So, perfect. First time for a seminary to be at the first African American.
Yeah.
Come on now.
That's pretty good. Yeah, unfortunately I didn't make this trip because of scheduling.
I understand. Actually, they've already kind of unofficially announced that 23 will be in Dallas.
Yes, good. Good deal. Good deal. Good recovery. Good recovery.
So where are you based out of, sir?
So I am here in Houston. We're Austin, Texas, rather.
Austin, okay. Yes. I was the director of conventions when Austin when we selected Austin.
Yeah, okay.
I'm the one who selected Austin to come to bring this. Right? Yes, sir. Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I am recently affiliated with the Austin chapter here.
Okay. Yes. I saw some of your brothers yesterday.
Yes.
The most seasoned one, brother. I forgot his name too. I'm glad I didn't call his name out yet because that's why I couldn't. But you know what I'm talking about. He's been in the chapter for so long.
Oh, shucks.
I think he done finally retired.
Could have.
Okay, but yeah, I saw him yesterday, and he was telling me about what was going on down there in Austin with your governor.
Oh boy, have mercy. Pray for us. Right?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Pray for us.
But he's not the only one.
Well, unfortunately.
Wow.
Go ahead.
No, I'm saying this is an extreme honor to introduce a fraternity brother.
How about that? How about that? Fall 92.
Fall 92. Okay, spring of 08, Eta Lambda.
Good deal. Epsilon Tau Lambda here. So it is 4 after the hour. You might want to go ahead and get started.
Okay. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Reverend Dr. Justin Shamel. I am the Associate Director of Recruiting at United Theological Seminary, and it is my esteemed honor and privilege to introduce our guest speaker and facilitator for this afternoon's workshop entitled Straightening Up the Steeple. pandemic, panic, or pivot. Reverend Dr. Matrix D. Seymore will be our facilitator, educator, author, and also totally professional. And then I just learned from him that he is a member of the very first African American collegiate fraternity of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. It is my pleasure to introduce to some and present to others Dr. Seymore. My prayer is that you will receive something and be blessed from his presentation. God bless you, Dr. Seymore, and also God bless each and every one of you, ladies and gentlemen. Please visit our website for more information about United Theological Seminary.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Dr. Brother Sherrill. It is my honor to be a part, and I also want to thank Reverend LaKesha for even having me be a part. And so while I am thanking you, I want you to, if you would, grab your phones. I'm going to need you to use it right away as soon as we get started. But I want to, again, thank you for your time. I know that it's been a long day, but gosh, hasn't the information been spectacular? The presenters have been on point, and I want to just sort of stay in that wind as we talk about straightening up the steeple. And so I asked you to get your phones, and while you're doing that, go ahead and activate your camera and look at this picture. When we look at this picture is of a church. The steeple has fallen in, the roof has fallen in. Gosh, windows are blown out. My question to you is, what words would describe how members of the church felt after finding this? What words come to mind? If you think about it, this was your church. What words would come to mind when you drove up to what once was your church? And so if you would, I ask you to open your cameras, and if you would zero into the code, and it's going to take you to this space where you can add in your responses and add in as many as you like, but unfortunately you can only add one word at a time. And so what's going to happen, we're going to see this thought bubble appear. What are the words that come to mind when you think about that picture we saw earlier? What words come to mind? Go ahead and take out your phone. It doesn't show your name. It doesn't capture any information. It just allows you to enter words into this thought bubble. What words come to mind? Are we able to get on? If you will go ahead. So I see hurt. If we'll just add the word hurt into the QR, hurt. Let's see. Someone says not picking it up. Let's see if I can do it here. And so what happens is once you see the QR code, Slido will come up, and if necessary, I can help. So there's the word hurt. Devastated. What else do we see? There's shock. There's awe. Absolutely. There's confusion. Absolutely. And so what I want you to see is what we see from this picture, these expressions, these feelings of hurt. These are the same feelings that churches felt at the onset and the impact of COVID-19. And these are not just the feelings that someone felt who was a member of this church, but they are also the feelings of pastors who had to deal with COVID-19 at home. These are the feelings of family members who worked for the church or work in ministry, but still had to deal with what was going on their job. These are the feelings that individual or parents had to deal with when their children were looking back at them, wondering, what is it that, what are we going to do? And so, in this time together, and I think I'm having difficult, okay, there we go. In this time together, in this session, when we talk about pandemics and disruption, two things we want to walk away with. We want to walk away with an understanding and a capacity, rather, to apply continuous improvement models to ministry priorities. And then we also want to provide an opportunity for participants to initialize transformation or some form of a transformational improvement plan. And so in order to make that happen, a couple of things. I invite you to be present in this moment. I invite you to fully participate. I invite you to allow for equity of voice. Then be willing to explore blind spots. And then share with us in creating a momentum of forward movement. And so, can we talk about disruption? Possibly no other word could better describe 2020 than disruptive. Standard operations for everyone was altered. The way we did things, everyone had to stop. Everyone had to deal with the shock and awe of no longer being able to go along. And fortunately, unfortunately, however you want to see it, the church was no exception. We had to stop our usual large gatherings, and we had to stop our weekly meetings, and we had to stop our fellowship moments, and we had to stop our hugging and our kissing and sharing potluck meals. We had to stop our normal process. And this disruption of our normal process not only changed the lives of many individuals and how we went about our daily lives, but for the church was exposed. We were exposed in that not everything we said we do was being done. Not everything that we said we had to have was necessary. Not everything that we had been taught was necessarily true. And so how did the church respond to COVID-19 or the disruption of the pandemics? And keep in mind that the pandemic was not just COVID-19, but it was also social injustice and unrest. It was also an economic fallout all at the same time. And so how did the church respond? And some of these you probably will recognize. Some churches panicked. Some churches panicked, then they pivoted. And I'll explain them. And then other churches, they panicked, but then they pivoted so that they can continue to perform. And so let me be very clear. I want us to give ourselves permission to feel the way we feel about this disruption. Prior to these disruptions, there was no playbook. There was nothing to say, this is how most of us should operate. And so it is okay for us to feel the way we feel about this pandemic, about this ongoing pandemic. But then some of us, we panicked and we quickly turned our Bible studies to Zoom, and we quickly turned the camera on and duplicated what we normally do on Sunday morning, and in hopes that the members would be there. But then there were those who panicked like everyone else, but they pivoted. They shifted gears from what they normally did to what they needed to do to maintain function of the church. And so how did they do it? What was it that some churches did? How was it that some churches could pivot in this crisis and keep ministry moving? So what I want to share with you is there was no great secret. They focused on continuous improvement, and they focused on continuous improvement prior to the pandemic. And so what you see before you here is the PDCA model. And it's simple. You know, there's a plan. You execute the plan by doing what you say you were going to do. Check to see if there's any adjustments necessary. And then if necessary, if there's a need to pivot, if there's a need to adjust, then act on that need. And what many what I call transformational leaders did was they continued what was already in place. And I want to put a pin that transformational leadership or transformational ministries is not synonymous to mega ministries, to large churches. Transformational ministry is not synonymous to the stalwarts or the gatekeepers of church. But what some ministry leaders who have been successful in pivoting, when questioned, the one thing they had in common was that there was already a process to continuously improve ministry. Now, I want to be careful and remind us that when it comes to improving ministry or ministry work, this is not preparing for Sunday morning's sermon. This is the work that goes on between Sundays, after the service, before the next service, the part that most individuals will not see. And so this model, they apply to everyone and to everything. And when I say that, I questioned several leaders. And I asked them, what were some of their priorities prior to COVID and during the pandemic? And as you see here, some of the most popular responses were quality of ministry, equity in ministry, scalability of ministry, impact of ministry. And the way that this works is you'll see that they're all associated with continuous improvement, but they're also connected to each other. And so what I want us to do in this time together is to unpack them so that you can see what practical steps, what practical moves you can make within your own ministry to pivot from the disruption of COVID-19, of social injustice or unrest, and economic fallout. And so one of the areas that transformational leaders mentioned was the quality of ministry. They focused on continuously improving the quality of their ministry. And there was evidence that this was a focus, clear messaging about the church's mission and the church's identity, and how it was aligned to the Great Commission of going out, teaching, making disciples, how their mission was always going to be aligned to. But then other evidence was emphasis on membership and leadership development. And so what they did was they basically applied continuous improvement to the quality of their ministry. Now, what does that look like? So in this quality, or this continuous improvement, it was important that members understood that they were expected to be engaged in some area of ministry, in particularly their calling, their specific giftings, their areas of gifting. But it was made very clear, and it's constantly messaged, that there is an expectation, whatever your contribution, whatever your gift is, that every member is expected to engage in the work of ministry. So when COVID comes along, members are waiting on the call to action. They've already been trained and taught the basics that as Christians, we pray and we read the scriptures, we meditate, and we share our faith. So when COVID comes along, after we get past the shock, members of transformational churches understand, okay, so I've got to step up. This is my opportunity to exercise those things that I've been gifted with, but also to meet the expectations of a member of this congregation. And so it's been very evident in transformational churches of what those expectations are for members. And so when disruption comes along, we don't have to start from scratch. We just continue what we've always done. Another area that pastors and church leaders responded to was equity of ministry. They focused on continuously improving the equity of ministry, meaning not making sure that everyone gets the same type of ministry or minister to in the same way, but what needs to happen so that everyone, every stakeholder, whether within the ministry or without or outside of the ministry, gets what he or she needs. And so there's evidence, there was clear evidence that there were diverse means of engagement prior to COVID. And what by that I mean that there was the face-to-face worship, and then there was the virtual worship. There were the face-to-face meetings, but then there were the Zoom meetings or the go-to-meeting meetings. There were differentiated methods of communication. It wasn't just a telephone call. It wasn't just an email. It wasn't just one way of communicating the message. And there was a circle of communication. There were systems in place to communicate the mission, the efforts, the work of ministry within these organizations, and understand that the work in improving the equity of ministry was always going to be aligned with the quality of ministry. And so everyone understood that there should be diverse communication, effective and efficiently. Everyone understands that we don't offer opportunities to learn, grow, and develop one way. And so what transformational leaders have done prior to the pandemic disruption was to focus on how do we make sure that ministry is equitable. And once they've reached a certain place, they planned and they executed and they checked and they acted, they pivoted to make sure that they were always doing whatever was necessary to be more effective in the area of equity. following equity, and not in this particular order, but respondents also said that they focused on scalability and sustainability, meaning that they constantly focused on how do we improve our ability to minister to the people on a larger scale in a variety of ways. But how also do we sustain ourselves so that we can continue to minister to the needs of our congregation and our community? And there was evidence that these ministries focused on scalability because there were environmental needs assessments that were practiced on large scale and small scales. Earlier today, Pastor Nelms talked about social enterprise. That was an engagement with social enterprise that was very evident. But then also there was evidence that there were resource allocations or plan rather for resource allocations. In the event that a crisis happens, here's what we do. In the event that something changes within our congregation that impacts all of us, here's what we will do. In this whole idea of taking an assessment of what the needs are, transformational leaders have put the time in, put the work in to determine if something is going to happen, what people do we need? What facilities do we need? What finances do we need? And then where are we going to get them all from? In the event that they were constantly planning for such events, that when the pandemic disruption happened, they simply enacted their plan. They didn't have to start from scratch, but they simply continued what they were doing. They continued to ask themselves, have we planned for a crisis? Have we done our best job? In the event that something has already happened, did we execute the plan that we had? How did it impact the rest of ministries? And then finally, respondents said that they focused on the impact of ministry. They focused on continuously revisiting their mission and their connection to the Great Commission and asking themselves, what has been our impact? Are we impacting our congregation? Are we impacting our community? Are we impacting our stakeholders as best we can? Is there a way to improve what we do and how we impact our community? And there's evidence in place. There are responses from stakeholders in terms of feedback. Earlier today, Reverend Jessica mentioned that we have to practice listening. It was very clear among these the respondent pastors that they not only listened to the members, but they also listened to their community partners. And in order to listen to community partners, there had to be a relationship in place already. Earlier, Dr. Gould mentioned that they would go and knock on doors to get the input. Well, in order for the community to give input to the church that they may not feel welcome in, there has got to already been a relationship between the church and the community that says you are part, even if you never come into our facilities. And so there was evidence that impact was a focus because it was a practice to get instant feedback, formative feedback, and even summative feedback. And in one example, if the choir sang a new song, that was feedback from the song. Did the song make the intended impact? Was the song conducive to the messaging of the ministry? Was the song a turnoff? And the only way to get such feedback is to listen, to ask those questions. The choir members, those who listen to the song, those who know the song, those who may have nothing to do with the ministry, but how does this song impact you? And then these respondents had evidence of using data to make decisions. Data collected from every effort throughout the ministry, scaled back and forth to make decisions to improve every area of ministry. And again, these were not the exhausted responses, but these were the areas that were most popular among responses, among responders. And so again, how did some churches accept the fact that life was going to be different? How did they accept what was going on, but not totally shut down ministry? They already had in place a focus on quality. They had in place a focus on equity, stability, sustainability, and impact. And with each of those areas, they employed continuous improvement. Transformational ministries will constantly employ how can we do what we do better? How can we reach further? How can we be more efficient? How can we communicate the message of the gospel of Jesus Christ in a more diversified way? And then how do we know if we are making impact? How can we make greater impact? And so I want to share with you that a part of my bivocational work as an administrator in higher ed is to train and assess colleges of education and how to improve what it is that colleges and universities do in terms of preparing educators. And so I tend to liken the work of teacher educator programs at the university to disciple preparation programming at the church or within ministries. And so each one of them is designed to train up an individual, to send them out into the world to exercise a particular gift, the gift of educating. The Bible even requires that those of us who are Christians educate others on discipleship, educate others to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that process is not an easy process. It's long and tedious. And no transformational pastor got it all right on day one. No transformational ministry executed everything at one time. But I can say that each one of them had to embrace the idea that this is work. This is not necessarily the work that you're going to get a pat on the back. It's not going to be the topic of many discussions. In fact, you're going to probably be a part of the group who, the 20% who does the major lifting of the church. But regardless of what the focus is of transformation for any ministry, based on evidence that they present, that's there, every church is either talking about transformation, they're planning for transformation, they're working on transformation, they're living in transformation, and then ultimately they are transforming lives. What do you mean by that? Churches that are talking about transformation, it's just that there's no evidence that there is a process to improve what we do. Planning for transformation goes a little further. We've moved past the talking and we've actually come together and we've called a meeting. This is not the meeting for the meeting, but this is the actual meeting where we start to discuss transformation. There's evidence that the congregation is starting to discuss transformation and how we improve what it is we do. And then there's the when we talk about working on transformation, we've gone from a plan to the actual work. What is the priority or priorities that we will address, and what is it that we will actually need to be doing? And so they're working on the transformation. And then there's the living in transformation, meaning that there are processes in place, general understandings, consensus on what is going on, why it's going on, how is it developed, and how am I involved in this process. And then when we talk about transforming lives, we have abandoned the idea of this is the way we've always done it, because we are now looking at a constant use of continuous improvement, looking at what it is that we do, asking those tough questions, having those critical conversations about what do we need to keep, what do we need to change. And we're making decisions that are showing up as a positive impact on the lives of our congregation, as well as those who are within our community and our stakeholders. And so if you would, I'm going to ask you one more time to take out your phones and activate your camera. And I'm going to ask you, when we talk about the transformation continuum, the way that it works is, one, to be honest with self. Where is my church on the continuum of transformation? Are we talking about it? We're not talking about it. Are we planning for it? Have we come together? Are we working, actually doing the work of transformation? Is transformation evident and alive, where it's permeating every area of our church, at least the processes? Are we changing lives? And so I'm going to ask you, if you would, go ahead and take a picture of that QR code, and answer the question based on evidence today. Where is your church on the transformation continuum? And again, every one of those respondents had to start somewhere. They were not perfect in every area. They weren't transformative in every area, but they did start. That was a starting point. There was some who were not even on the continuum. And then there were those who started in at working on transformation because it was already in place. And so if you would, take a picture of that QR code. You have to make sure that it fits into that little cube on your camera. It should give you an option to respond. And when you do, we'll see our responses. I'm gonna check the chats again to make sure no one's trying to. All right, so there's one. So we're responding. So far, the most responses are working. We're working on transformation. All right. There are 11 of us. Where do you rank your church? What is, based on evidence, based on what you know that's going on in your church right now? Where does your church fall on the transformation continuum? When we talk about transformation, transformational leaders put in the work, and there's evidence that they're putting in the work. There's systems in place that they're putting in the work to improve what it is they are doing. And regardless of what area they're working in, they're doing the work, the heavy lifting. All right. And so it seems like of the responses, working on transformation is kind of common. And here's let me kind of share with us some relief. The COVID-19 pandemic, the social injustice or unrest, the economic fallout, it revealed that many of our churches have been talking about ministry, but we were just that. We said we are transforming, but there was no evidence, and we were exposed. And as time will reveal, the church is going to have to answer to, well, you said that you are this. What happened? You said that you do this. What happened? And so it's going to become imperative that ministries that expect to sustain themselves in the work of ministry will have to do the work of ministry that you don't necessarily see on Sunday mornings. And so the doors of the church are open. When we return to the church, there has to be a different meaning behind this expression. Church cannot, should not, must not return to what it was. In fact, Dr. Michael Williams says that the Red Sea has parted and the church cannot go back. And so, Lance Watson of St. Paul, Virginia, he says that there are opportunities even in this crisis. And when I asked him what was his focus, his response was the health and safety of his congregation and the community that he serves. And if there was any advice, he suggested that we see this as an opportunity. And here's the beautiful part of it. Let's say we have not been doing anything more than talking about improving ministry, transforming our ministry. This is the best time. It's a great opportunity to start somewhere. Even if we're just talking about it, that's a start. But then we move to making plans and developing normal operations to improve ministry. Now, I must warn you that there are still going to be churches, ministries who expect to go back to the frame building and that everything is going to be just the way we left it. And unfortunately, transformational leaders will be those who sustain, those who go past the pandemic stage. Not because they suddenly had this gigantic team of strategists, but they had something in place already. Understand that not every congregation is going to be willing to do the work. Some congregations won't even have the capacity. But wherever you are is a great place to start improving ministry. And so what can we do? I'll ask you to do these three things, and you don't have to respond. But what is one thing that you can start focusing on right now? Would you focus on the quality of ministry? Would you focus on equity of ministry, sustainability, scalability, even impact? Or is there something else that you could focus on? What's one area of ministry that you can start focusing on right now? Once you have that in mind, ask the question, who needs to be at the table right now? And then who needs to eventually be at the table? And I can tell you this, that eventually our community partners need to be at the table. There should be community engagement within the ministry. And then thirdly, what help might we need to get started? Everyone says we don't have, but everyone has what they need to at least get started, to identify what else, who else would you need to improve ministry so that it reflects that we didn't walk out of this disruptive pandemic empty-handed, expecting for things to be the same. And so, in closing, I understand that ministry development is long, it's hard, and it's confusing. If I work with highly educated educators, and it's a challenge for them, I understand the work as a pastor, as a church leader, as a denominational church leader. I understand the challenges. And so what I'm going to offer, and I've talked with Reverend LaKesha about this, but I am going to offer those that are in attendance of this conference, a cohort, a coaching cohort, where we focus on the transformational planning process. And I'm going to do this at absolutely no charge. Yeah, no charge. But keep in mind, it will be a small cohort. And so if you are interested in learning more about how to plan for transformation, whether it's your church ministry, whether it is your community outreach ministry, if you are interested in participating in the transformational planning process that's catered to your ministry, reach out at, you can email me at info@drseymore.com. And that is it. Reverend LaKesha, I think there's room for questions. If there are any questions, I will entertain them at this time. And if there are any questions of anything that we talked about, again, if you have a question that that you would rather share with me, just me, go ahead and drop it in email, and I will do my best to respond to you. But at the same time, let's not underestimate the urgency of rethinking church. There will be numerous churches who are going to attempt to go back to ministry doing the same old things. And after members have been exposed to excellence in worship, excellence in communication, excellence in virtual communities, what we once did before will not suffice. So if you're interested, thank you so much, Sister Yolanda. If you're interested, go to email me at info@drseymour.com. And I will, let me see if I can maneuver this. info@drseymour.com. I think I got that right. Yes. And so if there are no other questions, I was asked to make sure that we allow participants to take a break between sessions. I'll hang around if you have any other further questions. But in the meantime, thank you so very much for your time and for your sharing. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of this great summit. Sister Gray, you're quite welcome. Thank you, Dr. Gould. Thank you, Sister Yolanda. And so that will conclude Straightening Up the Steeple. Thank you so much for your time. Have a blessed one.